Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mix Tank Live. My name is Mark Abrams from Puremix.net, and today we are going to be reviewing mixes from the Puremix Pro member community on Mix Tank. Mix Tank, if you're not aware of it, is a platform where if you're a Puremix Pro member, you can post your mixes and other members of the community will go on and drop timestamped comments with suggestions for you. If you're struggling with the mix, you can tell people what it is that you're struggling with. They can offer suggestions. It's freaking awesome. We call it a think tank for your mixes, hence Mix Tank. So before we get started, I got a couple little housekeeping things to do. First up, the Sound Particles Density Giveaway is ending tomorrow night. So if you haven't entered that yet, head over to Puremix.net, go over to giveaways, and make sure that you enter to win a copy of Density. A couple weeks ago on the Great Big Plugin Show, I did a review of it, and we went through and we tried it out on a bunch of different sources. I've been playing with it in Atmos, and it's absolutely amazing. I'm finding all kinds of creative uses for it, and highly recommend that you guys go try and win it for free, because it's rad. Next up, if you've been tuning in, we have a Beatles series where we went to Abbey Road with Ken Scott, one of the original Beatles engineers, and the Fab Four, which is considered one of the best Beatles cover bands in the world. And we recreated the sound of the Beatles over 4 different eras. Era 1 is out now on puremix.com or net, whatever you choose at this point. And in that series, we, replicate everything from where they were in the room, the exact microphones, the reg console, everything about it is trying to be a one-to-one of what happened to show you the techniques that they used on the different eras of Beatles recordings. The first part, Era 1 mixing, is coming out on Friday. That's a 2-episode release. So if you're wondering how that stuff was mixed, Ken and Scott go onto the original console that it was mixed on and do a mix of the Fab Four from Era 1 from those videos. Next Friday, we have a new video of Daryl Thorpe mixing the Foo Fighters. It is a track from their project called the DGs, and the track is Tragedy. So if you've been following along with the Foo Fighters and their whole Bee Gees recreation and cover album, you can watch that video next Friday and see how Daryl did it. Pretty cool. All right, so let's dive in. This is Mix Tank for anybody who's never seen it. And over on the left, we've got a bunch of cards. These are submissions from users with from other pro members. They put their songs up for me to review today. Over on the far right of that, over there's a description from the user, and that's where they put their comments about stuff that they might be struggling with or questions that they might have. So we'll be reading those. Above that, there's a track status. For example, the one on my screen says advanced mix right now. This is from Clyde67. And we're going to start off with this one. But if you guys are here live and you're in the YouTube chat, please let me know your username and the song that you submitted, and I'll try to get to it. I always try to do everybody who shows up to the live stream so that, we can say thanks for coming. And before all that, please do all the YouTube stuff. Hit the like and subscribe button, do the notification bell and all that so you know when we go live. It really does help us keep doing this every single week. Mix Tank is an every other week thing, every other Monday. And on the in-between Mondays, I do episodes of the Great Big Plugin Show where I pull up a plugin, we go through it live, I break down exactly what's going on, and then you guys can say stuff like, try it out on bass, or, put that reverb thing on whatever. So you can hear the plugin as you like it. So, all right, we're going to start off with Clyde67, Just Fine. And you guys let me know your songs and everything in the chat. And let's check it out.
it's cold outside, I see it at night. Whenever it's this time of year, I take your hands and pull you in near. Change my mind, thought it might be over, but I'm just fine, feeling somewhat older. Set your eyes on some place out of reach. We can take a drive and look to the sky. On the porch where you fell to your knees, we can say goodbye to everything. When sometimes dreaming just takes over, but not this time. We'll stay till October. Change my mind, thought it might be over, but I'm just fine, feeling somewhat older, and I'm just fine. Maybe let's start over. It's only time. Say we'll stay for closure.
Clyde, you know the way to a man's heart. You put Mellotron in the song. That's it. I love it. Man, that's a great song. Really great song. That's right up my alley, too. Love it. There's a lot of great stuff going on in here. One, I think it's a really good mix. Two, the tones that you have going on are fantastic. So well recorded, really well done. Really love the snare drum sound, and I think you killed it. You put a couple things over in the description. You say this is a mix, but it has 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction and limiting added for a reference. We're going to talk about that in a second. It says you started this production with the idea that you wanted it to be a bit more minimal and not overpolished, but ultimately ended up with something a bit more in the middle. Some raw elements and some simple production fun, all recorded in my small studio. Nice job. I have a few minor tweaks I know I want to make, but before I do, I thought I'd seek out some fresh perspective. So, I'm feeling fresh, so I'll give a little perspective. First of all, let's talk about the 1 to 2 dB gain reduction limiting added for reference thing. So this is a really popular topic about when you send something off to mastering, do you release the limiter or do you bypass the limiter or get rid of it? And your 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction thing is a part of your mix. It's a part of your sound. If you've been mixing into that limiter, you're making decisions based on what it's doing. typically it's going to be hitting the snare or like hitting your kick or something like that, especially if you're only hitting it for 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction. So that's going to affect how you're dialing in that snare compressor, all of those things, how you're setting your attack times, how you feel about the attack times, all of that, if you were mixing into the limiter, is affected by it. Same thing if you're using it for reference. If this is the thing that you start driving around with, then you're going to be used to those things. You might say something like, oh, the snare's too snappy, I need to dial it back, whatever. All of that is going to be based on your limiter. So all of that to say, my personal preference is to mix into a limiter, and it is a part of the mix. And when I send it off to mastering, you haven't even mentioned sending it off to mastering, but when I do send it off to mastering, unless they really can't live with it, I don't bypass it, because it is a part of that mix. When you start limiting things, the back wall comes up, and by back wall, I mean all of like those reverb tails and all of the space and everything. It kind of comes in and gets closer. There's really great things that can happen from limiting, and it can be a big part of the mix. So you bypass that, and the mix could potentially fall apart, and for sure it won't be the same thing as it was when you were mixing it if you mixed into the limiter. That's not an argument for limiting the crap out of your mix. Just a small note I wanted to put in there. I think this is sounding really good, and you might not, want to get rid of that. And I only say that because you say you added it for reference. So you have things feeling really good, so the limiter might be a big part of that. Okay, so let me get to my notes here. So the first thing I thought was the center guitar lead at 45 in the intro was a little bit loud and a little bit muddy. It could just use a little bit of clarity. That could either come from, doing additive EQ, adding some presence to it, or from ducking some of those low mids. There are a lot of low mids happening in the other guitars and stuff, but you don't want to kill the tone of the guitar either, so just watch out for that. It could potentially also use some space. I'm going to talk about that when we get to the solo. First thing, the big one for me, this is probably the biggest one about the mix, where if you change nothing else, this one would be the one thing I would say to do. And that's at 136, I lose the backbeat of the drums when he switches over to the side stick. And what happens as a result of that, imagine if you took away the snares, the drummer's stick, and he couldn't play the backbeat at all when you were playing this live. Everything would kind of like fall apart and you wouldn't have the groove anymore. That's kind of what I'm feeling in the mix when we get to 136. I feel like I lose the backbeat and need some more, a little bit more groove happening there. So tips for that. This one, if you watch Greg Wells start to finish on Puremix, he dealt with this beautifully. Simply cut the side stick portion of the snare track, put it on its own track, and then process it separately from how you did the snare. Again, I think the snare sounds great. So if you take the side stick part out of it, put it on its own track, process it so it's got a nice crack to it, and you can put it up in the mix so we still have a nice backbeat. I think that's going to serve you really well. API EQs sound awesome for this. That's like my go-to thing for a side stick, just because of where you can put the frequency points for the, for getting some crack out of it and some wood and all of that stuff. Any EQ will work, obviously, but that one seems to always have the right frequency point for me. Not all the time, but the other nice side effect of that is you can do things like, you could always automate reverb on the snare, but you can do things to process it differently and put it in its own space to really, kind of separate the scene change when he switches over to the side stick and what happens in the song. On the vocals, I felt like there was a little bit of a low mid buildup in the lead vocal, and it feels very mono. Very style appropriate. So some of the stuff might be test it out, see if you like it, maybe you won't. And you might have just nailed it for the style of it, especially given that you were, moving with the intention of keeping it minimal. So some things I like to do on lead vocals, especially like this, like a 16th mono delay, something dark. Echo Boy has a mode called Fat that I like to push saturation on, push input and output, kind of get a very dark, distorted, not, overly distorted, but a little saturated mono delay happening right behind the lead vocal, not to the point where I hear it, but to the point where it pushes the lead vocal forward in the mix and closer to the listener. Just having a little contrast of something existing behind that vocal can help it shift forward. So not necessarily wanting to hear a bunch of delay behind it. In fact, I usually leave the feedback all the way down. So it's just a little slap happening right behind the vocal. The other trick I love, microshift, is amazing for spreading a vocal out. That can be useful if you want to take the vocal and instead of it being here, you can make it just go here. Not necessarily here, but just give it a little bit of width and body. Body not in the sense of tone, but in the sense of size. And then one other thing would be, instead of cutting a bunch of low mid to clean up any of the low mid buildup stuff, it might just be that it could use a little bit of presence. With that, be a little careful, because I heard 1 or 2 syllables that felt like they got a little sharp in the presence area. Not something I would freak out about. You could always automate EQ or automate volume on those moments, but if you end up boosting instead of cutting, just watch out for some of the other sections of the song. Background vocals. So I think that the majority of the song had the background vocal over on the right, and that felt really cool. The last chorus felt like there were more background vocals and they wanted to wrap around me. Again, microshift is a great tool for getting vocals to kind of go wide and sit in a mix and just kind of diffuse things, but leave them in a nice layer. Other thing was the bass guitar. Felt like it could use a little bit of mid-range definition. 800, 1.6, great frequency points. Thank you, Vance Powell, for just getting the bass to poke out and add a little bit of detail to it. So not necessarily looking for like the, Ampeg clacky clack sound, but just a little bit of, definition in the mid-range of the bass, I think will go a long way. At 310 on the guitar solo, I felt like it could use a little bit of space and room. It comes in, it's awesome. Doesn't need to be a huge overproduced sound, especially given your direction, but I felt like if you put that into something like an Ocean Way room or one of those Sunset sound reverb, room emulations from IK Multimedia, that would serve it really well. Again, microshift can work well here, but I think that might go toward more of a produced sound on this one, but you could try it. And then when the chorus comes back in, you could always take away some of that space to let the guitar sit back in the track again. I hope that helps. I love that song. That was a great way to start the day. So thank you, Clyde. That's awesome. All right. And you're in the chat. That's awesome. Great. Okay, next one up. We've got, let's see, we've got Urs. Just making sure I go to the very top here. So Urs has a song called Lost in the Woods. Let's go look for it. Lost in the Woods. There it is. All right, let's check it out. Here we go.
Again, you're gone, off on a different path than mine. I'm left behind, wondering if I should follow. You had to go, and of course it's always fine. I probably could catch up with you tomorrow. But is this what it feels like to be growing apart? When did I become the one who's always chasing your heart? Now I turn around and find I am lost in the woods. North is south, right is left when you're gone. I'm the one who sees you home, but now I'm lost in the woods, and I don't know what path you are on. I'm lost in the woods. Up till now, the next step was a question of how. I never thought it was a question of whether. Who am I if I'm not your guy? Where am I if we're not together forever? Now I know you're my true north, 'cause I am lost in the woods. Up is down, day is night when you're not there. Oh,
All right, awesome. Finish my note. All right, great. Earth, holy crap. What a production, man. Nice job. That's killer. I'm going to read the description just in case anybody can't read it with the terrible OBS screen capture thing that's happening. So he says, hi, Puremix. There's no E on it. He didn't put an E on it. So Puremix, which was funny enough, potentially an April Fool's thing that we were going to do one year. We were going to put cats and replace all the logos with cats on April Fool's and go with Puremix. So anyway, Urs got our April Fool's joke. So hi, Puremix. This is a cover I've arranged, produced, and mixed the song for Swiss-Italian singer Thierry Condor. The original version is from the soundcheck Frozen 2, performed by Weezer. Our goal was to make it a 1989 Chicago, the band, style version of it. I've done it all in DP11. Man, that's awesome because you nailed the Chicago thing on the chorus. It's uncanny. Uncanny. It's just great. Very nice job. Yeah, I have many great things to say about this. The production is absolutely phenomenal. You've got a really good mix going on here, and very stoked that you submitted this. Thank you very much. All right. So to get into the comments, I don't have a whole lot here. I actually agree with a lot of what Sonic Science Lab has put on here. But yeah, so in the intro, I felt the lead vocal was a little bit too dry. I hear a quiet, distant reverb on it. And it's a different style than I would use to just kind of like add a little bit of space around the vocal. I like the tail of it that you have on there and everything. So I don't know that you need to change it, but maybe there needs to be another reverb that just kind of lets him sit into the bed of the track and have a little bit of space around him. So it's less of him just on a microphone. Again, like dry is really cool there. So I wouldn't do something that confuses and changes the vibe of that, so it's like a big plate and it feels all washed out and everything. I dig where you're going and I dig the direction. I just think it needs to sit in the track a little bit more if you can do something with it. Could also use a little bit more body on the lead vocal. Sonic Science used the word nasally. I think it's one of those things where, again, like instead of cutting a bunch of stuff, maybe you could bring up some body of that vocal and just make him feel a little bit rounder instead of quite so on the point. So in the bridge, the things get a little bit phasey with the vocals, but it is intentional because it's a total scene change. And I love what you've done there, but they feel a little bit diffuse. So I'm wondering if either it's a volume thing where they come up a little bit, or if you just kind of play with that effect a little more and see if you can get a little bit more focus out of it. It feels a little diffused with the phasey thing that's going on with it. I agree with Sonic about the transients on the drums being more modern than the rest of the elements in the track. So I feel like you've got more of a period sound going, definitely 1989 Chicago. You freaking nailed it. But the drums, while crystal clear, sound crystal clear and modern. So I don't know if there's something to address there. It's not something that I think ruins a song or anything like that. It's just a thing that I noticed, and it could be completely fine. Other stuff is completely subjective as well. So I was thinking maybe on the last chorus where he does the drug out lost in the woods, if you added some kind of cool effect tail onto the woods part so that when he stops singing that note, it doesn't feel like he's as exposed. It just kind of carries on and feels like it's all a big part of that. And let's see. So that was one thing. And the guitar solo at the end, I felt like after he stops singing, the guitar solo enters. He enters, but he's standing 20 feet back on stage. So I talk a lot about this on Mixed Tanks, but in this case, if you're imagining a band playing this on stage, you would kind of imagine at that point, the lead singer steps back, the lead guitar player steps forward, the spotlight switches over to the lead guitar player. That's also what I feel needs to happen in the mix. And instead it sounds like the lead guitar player was standing in the back of the stage. The lead singer stopped singing and the spotlight went to the point where the guitar player was supposed to be. He should have stepped into that spot to play his guitar solo, but he got cold feet and he never stepped forward. So I would bring that guitar solo forward, listen to the vocal relationship of the guitar solo. You might not want to go as loud as the vocal, but you want it to feel like he's as important as the lead vocal. I mean, maybe you do, but you want him to be as important at that point. If we're supposed to, as listeners, go to the guitar solo, help us out by having him step forward. And then on the very last note of the guitar solo, it goes into that outro thing. The band is vamping and going out. I thought it'd be cool if he added some kind of tail on there, so it just kind of echoed out into the band vamping. So it feels like he played his last note and stepped away like a rock star out of the spotlight, and the band just continued out and faded out. So Urs, I think you killed it. That was awesome. That's all very, very small stuff. You're like 10 minutes away, in my opinion. But yeah, I hope that that's useful, and thank you so much for submitting that. That was fantastic. You nailed the Chicago thing. I'm blown away. That singer is uncanny right next to him. Awesome. Okay, let me see who's in the chat here. We got Primetime. What's up? Mike, good to see you again. Chris Strickler's here. Good to see you. Let's see. We got Carlos, Ryan Mondock. Nice. Martin, good to see you. As always, 6 of 1. I know that guy. I saw him yesterday. Okay, let's see. So let me go to the next one. The next one is going to be from the one and only Mike Ormsby. Ormsby. Sorry, I just looked to see if I spelled that wrong. Studio Jamon. Creation is all systems go. Nice. Okay. Studio. There we are. Maybe. I like it. Okay. Everybody get ready, because Mike's songs are always a freaking journey, and they're amazing. Here we go. Mike, as usual, I might have to cut it short because it's 7 minutes long, but we'll skip around if we have to. Here we go.
Roger that, Houston. All systems 5 by 5. Double O weight, clear to runway 04, wind at 030 degrees, altimeter 30.
Can't stop your track early. It's too cool, man. Mike, every time you get me every time. Amazing job. Okay, so I'm gonna go from. So first of all, I barely have anything. Sonic Science has some stuff on here. I agree with a little bit of it. I think that you've done an amazing job, and I think that we talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago, but Mike is in the middle of building a new room. It's going to be Atmos, and he can tell you more about it in the chat if he wants to or not. But it's everything that you compose is so well fit for Atmos, and it's going to be amazing when you're in that room. I can't wait to see what you do. I'm just going to comment on the very few things that I had. It's going to be much shorter than the song. Right here at the end, shakers, tambourine stuff. There's a lot of low frequency and high frequency content on that. I would consider just taming that a little bit, because there's some high stuff that's a little bit like it's really high and it's really kind of jarring to the ear. And then there's some rumble on the shaker on the same instrument that's doing the jingle. So yeah, I would tighten it up a little bit on the top and bottom on that, just to make it a little bit more pleasing. The toms in this section, you have a particular tom that feels very dark and boxy, and given everything that you do in all of your composition stuff, the instruments you choose, the unique way that you go about tracking it and everything, on the ones that sound dull, and I think you'll know which ones I'm referencing on it, I'd love to see what would happen if you push things more like to the edge or beyond, not just with like, let me make it sound good in the mix, but what happens if you oversaturate that drum and you go for like some kind of crazy sound, the same as like how you choose your instruments. What if you push things too far? You can always dial them back or whatever, but what if you push things too far, like saturation or compression or whatever it is, just to kind of like mangle the thing and make something really interesting out of it. That's if I was mixing it and I got a sound like that, I would be looking for something I could use to like make it a moment instead of just like, oh, let me clean up the bottom. It needs a little bit more top end presence, blah, blah, blah. What could you do to make a moment out of it? So that was that thing. And maybe it is just cleaning it up or whatever and preserving the natural tone of the instrument. But given all that you're doing and how you're kind of pushing some boundaries, I'd love to see what would happen if you went further with it. So the background vocals would be the next thing. Sonic had a point that they're too close together. So I love everything about them. Like in terms of the boxy mid-rangey thing, I actually think that on their own, they're good. They're really good. And I think that they fit the tone of the mix. I love that they're not overcompressed. I feel the singer moving away from the microphone and coming back, and that adds some more of like the pulse of the music and everything. And I think it's really cool. If you compress that vocal and tried to level it out, I think you'd ruin the groove naturally. With the second background vocal that came in, I wanted to kind of hear that person push back a little bit and then panned off. And that I think would just lend itself to your direction toward, spatial mixing and trying to get these massive soundscapes. Put her in a different plane, front to back, if you will, like move her back in the mix, pan her out a little bit, not so that she's not audible or anything like that, but just so that you kind of use more of the canvas. And speaking of canvas, you've got some phase things going on where it's super wide. Now, that being said, I don't know in this case if I'd fix it. I'd look for spots where it feels a little bit wobbly and like you're getting vertigo, but the guitar panning that you had in the beginning was amazing, and I think it was because of whatever you were doing, what kind of phase tricks you were doing on the mix. But you're like, while it's phasey, I think like you're really going for this huge spatial Atmos thing, and it's like you're trying to do Atmos in stereo. That can get a little washy, and there can be some translation issues when you go to other systems, which again is just another reason that I can't wait till you get into Atmos and then you just do binaural fold downs from your Atmos mix. I think like things will be more phase coherent and all of that, and they'll feel really, really good. But when you get that canvas, it's going to be very exciting. Last thing is just at the very beginning, kind of worked my way backwards in this one. The low frequency rumbling from the thunder. I agree with Sonic. Some of the sub stuff is getting out of control. And you could do a very gentle high pass filter to just kind of clean that up and still get the big rumble out of it, but not have the speakers flutter, if that makes sense. And if you have like a sub and things aren't flooding for you and they feel awesome, it could be too much elsewhere or whatever. So, cool, man. Again, thank you so much for submitting. I always love when your stuff is on here. It's amazing. Okay. Next one is going to be Billboard Model from Gourd. Let's check it out. Billboard Model. There we go. Let's check it out. Here we go.
1, 2, 1, 2.
6.
Haven't you seen the girl in New York City? Her hair is blue and her eyes are like the sun. She smiles at me when I pass her every morning. Don't know that I need to think she's self. She's a billboard model. She is a billboard model. What does she do on her days off? Does she go to the park? Wait for me in the dark. She's got the features of 10 women, the mind, I know she's thinking, how do I join the world down below? She's a billboard model. She is a billboard model. What does she do on her days off? Does she go to the park? Wait for me in the dark. She's a billboard model. Yes, she's a billboard model. She's a billboard model. Yes, she's a billboard model. She looks out right through the passing people. She's always laughing even when their mood is down. No one comes to her when they're in trouble. They all feel she really wouldn't care. She's a billboard model. She is a billboard model. What does she do on her days off? Does she go to the park? Wait for me in the dark. She's a billboard model. She's a billboard model. Yes, she's a billboard model. She's a billboard model. Yes, she's a billboard model. She's a billboard model. Yes, she's a billboard model.
Amazing, Gourd. Nice work. Love the song. Very, very cool. Okay, just catching up on chat here. Very neat. Mike had a lot of cool stuff. He talked about a studio in there. You guys are awesome. Look at you guys. You're having a party in the chat room. Very cool. Okay, awesome. Dig it, Gourd. Very nice. Really great job on the production and everything, too. I think you said, tried to take extra care not to go too far with my compression in this mix. Also wondering about the EQ and reverb on the lead vocal. Thanks. Okay, cool. So I got some thoughts on it, and mostly they're related to balance and then size. These are the kind of things that pop up. I don't know if we talked about this with your other tracks, Gourd, but some of this stuff can pop up when monitoring environments are not fantastic, because I believe that somebody who makes a production like this and some of the other stuff that's going on in the mix too would make different decisions. So the things that I'm hearing are the kick is really, really big. So it's got a lot of low end and a lot of volume to it. Volume in the actual, like, push the fader up, not in the size relation. But the kick's really loud and the bass is really loud and also has a lot of low end. So those two things combined, probably, like, they lean toward, I don't think that you're getting the accurate picture of what's happening when you're making your decisions in the bottom of the track. So if you are, I believe that you're in the chat, you posted your song for me to check out, so hopefully you're still here. Maybe let me know what monitors you're using in the chat, and I'll see if I can comment on that. But it's probably going to be a room thing. Low end's the hardest thing to accomplish in building a room, or, you know, getting one to sound good and all that stuff. So I think that that's a lot of what's happening here. But the kick is, the reason that anything is too big or too loud is always in context of something else, right? Because if you just had it in solo, you couldn't say, oh, that's too loud. It'd just be in solo and then be your monitor control. So if you listen to the elements, like the kick drum versus the snare drum, The kick drum is close to me. It's huge. It's got a lot of size. Just like if I was really close to the kick drum and somebody hit it, I would hear a lot of big boom and all of that stuff. The snare drum has a lot of reverb on it. It's not very bright, and it's quieter, and that gives it a feeling of the kick drum is here and the snare drum is back here. So yeah, perfect. Good job, camera. That's the perfect focus. So kick drum, snare drum back here or whatever. And if you were standing next to a kick or next to a drum kit, it would probably be something more like that, right? Like the snare would, have more crack and be a little bit louder than that. So basically, yeah, I wrote like the snare feels like it's several feet behind the kit. And then also the floor tom, especially I think at 210, there's a part where it's coming in on the three. It feels like it's very, very close on my left speaker. There's high end, there's presence, there's mid range to it. It's close. And then the hi-hat has full bandwidth. It's bright, it's louder, it's close. So I feel like I've got like kick drum, I've got snare drum, and then I've got like hi-hat, and I've got floor tom, and this is a bat. Sweet. Cool. So those are just things I would listen for, is like the kick relationship and making it feel like it's all in the same plane or close together and feeling good. Bass guitar, same thing. It felt like it was really big, really like a lot of low end on the bottom of it, and very loud. The guitar hitting chords at 150 felt a little bit thick to me. And the top end of the acoustic guitar felt like it was, again, making it step in front of everybody. It had more brightness, more presence, as though like I'm hearing a perfect, representation of it right next to it. That means it was captured really well, but in terms of the context of the mix, it feels like it's forward to everything else. Same thing with the electric at 344. So before reaching for a bunch of EQ, except in the case of the kick and the bass, if you boosted a lot of low end on those things, maybe dial that back. Turn your monitors down if you can. And Mark, your hand signals are impressive. Thanks. Okay, it says you said that you're using HS80 Yamaha monitors. So the room can also be a big factor in this. So as you turn up your speakers, you excite the modes of the room more. And if you have cancellation spots at your listening position, you're going to be amplifying that with volume of your speakers. So I would try to turn your speakers down as low as you can that's still comfortable and not annoying. You don't want to make it so quiet that you're like leaning your head into the speakers and trying to hear things, and you don't need to like squint and make yourself hurt to do this, but turn your speakers down really low and then work on the balance a little bit. Bring your, if you have a lot of automation stuff and you haven't done trim automation and you're in Pro Tools, you could just go into trim mode, bring all those faders down and rework your balance a little bit. But it's a balance thing to me, and I would just bring the speakers down so you're not exciting the room a lot. Headphones are also great, but they're harder to place things, in my opinion, especially things like kick, snare, vocal. But you can dial in the low end with them. So anyway, bring the speakers down, rework your balance a little bit, and then I think that you've got something really good. All of the stuff sounds good in and of itself, and even some of the mid-range things feel really good. Like you're getting a good representation on mid-range and making really good decisions there, which again is why I think that you're not getting the right picture, because given your other decisions, it doesn't make sense that your low end would be so bloated. So I hope that helps. Great song, great production, and on to a good path. So if you have more questions, let me know. Mark at Puremix.net. And let's move on. So guys, if you are here and you submitted a mix, please put it in the YouTube chat. That's where I'm looking. I got it right here. So I can make sure I get to your song before we get out of here. All right. Our next one is from Flandy Bob. Good to see you, Flandy, or Bob, whatever one you want to go by. And this is called Les Singlots. I'm sure I butchered that, but let's check it out anyway. Here we go. Gourd, thanks again.
Je déambule
Okay, I'm going to stop us for a second in the middle of this amazing guitar solo. And I want to call attention to one thing. I want you to listen to the brightness of the drums compared to the guitars in the track. And then once again, if you're listening on speakers, it's a little harder with headphones, but listen to the difference moving forward to backward, right? So who's forward, who's back, who are we supposed to be listening to at this point? So with that stuff in mind, let me back up a little bit to this freaking killer bend that happened, and let's listen. Nice, Bob. Very cool. I love this. Okay, so yeah, first of all, amazing. I love the production. The playing is great. I've been very, very bored. This is a total personal thing, but I've been really, really bored with guitar solos lately. And that one was interesting. So that was cool. It was fun to listen to. Okay, so looking through your comments here, you say, okay, back to the song without the Ozone Master assistant nonsense. You said it, not me. I tried to play with the panning volume between sections to give it a bit more movement and space. Not sure if this is a great idea or maybe I overdid it. I'm curious to know what you guys and gals think. I still have some clicks and pops here and there I need to fix by hunting the original session files. Thank you. So clicks and pops, I didn't hear anything that really bugged me. So I don't know. One cool thing that happened, you put in the comments, I can hear the kick way too loud and the vocals are are too buried already. Oh, well, you know, what's awesome about this is it's one of the best ways to check your mix is to just bring somebody else in the room, sit them in the chair and go sit back on the couch and play it for them. And the second that it comes in, this happens to me all the time. I'll bring my poor wife in to listen to mixes. And as soon as I hit play and like, we're in the first verse, I'm like, you know, I got to go fix a bunch of stuff. But it's the best thing ever because something about it being exposed to other people makes your brain think in a different way. I have nothing to back this up. No scientific evidence. Susan Rogers could probably tell you something useful. I can't. But it happens to me every time I bring somebody into the room. So it's a great way to figure stuff out for you. 6 of 1 guitars and Vox are nice. Kick bothers me a little. You said the same thing about the kick being too loud. That was my first comment, is the kick is poking out. And what we were listening for in the bridge section with the guitar solo, it's back to that whole thing of on stage, who's forward, who's back. How do you tell the listener what to listen to? Make them step forward on stage. And the reason I wanted to listen to the top end in the presence of the drums is in thinking about how we, perceive things as close and far. If you, same way that, with a microphone, if you bring it in close, what changes? If you actually think about what happens, forget about microphones, actually. If you're standing next to somebody who's talking and they come closer to you, if you think about what happens to their voice, they get a little bit boomier, they get, maybe a little bit brighter. There's less room in it, less space around them. Things become more present and focused, right? And it's the same thing with mixing and how we do all of this stuff too. It's, if we want something to be the focal point, it needs to be, our ear needs to know that it has more importance than everything else happening in the mix. So the same things that would happen to something that is closer to you, if we go into the whole, evolution of our ears, and our ears are made to find out if there's a lion, saber-toothed tiger behind us, which I haven't seen any of those in Ohio lately, but I'm looking. They're there to tell us if predators are close or far or whatever, so we can detect distance from objects and all of that. So the same rules apply to how we listen to the world in music. And if we need to tell the listener something's more important, it needs to have the effect of it coming closer and some of those things that we hear. Just another way to think about it. And that leads me to a segue. So pardon this commercial interruption. It's not a commercial, but something, because you guys are pro members and you have access. The How to Listen to series, or How to Listen series with Fab does these videos, and these are some of the most valuable videos on the site, and I highly recommend checking them out. With my terrible screen capture, sorry. The main one that I want to point you to is How to Listen the Basics, and don't think of that in any kind of bad way about it being the basics. Like, the basic, when I watched this video probably 7 years ago or whenever we put it out, I learned so much, and all of the stuff that I'm reciting about this front to back and top, bottom, and all of that stuff, I got a lot of it from this. And this video is insane. It's, again, it's one of the most valuable things I can think of on the site. And yeah, there's a bunch of listening exercises inside of it. He talks about oral memory when A-Bing stuff. It's really a fantastic video that I'd recommend that everybody go listen to, and I'm probably going to go watch it again myself because it was really, really great. And then, of course, there's some other ones on here too. Like, if you are struggling with being able to hear how, like, compression or reverb, different types of reverb, all of that stuff, there's some really good ones on here. Then there's more specific ones like an LA2A or serial compression or a Pultec or an SSL compressor, all of that. But these are all really, really useful stuff. How to use reference mixes is a great one too. This is all stuff that it goes in the, in the log in your brain. And the next time that you pull up a mix, you think back to guitar solo. Eventually it becomes second nature, and you're like, guitar solo, he needs to step forward on stage. How do I do that? What things bring him forward to do that? So yeah, again, end rant, but go check those videos out. They're really fantastic. Other than that, like, Sonic Science put that the drums and the cymbals are on the harsh side, disconnects them from the drums. Look at the kick transient response. I agree with that. It's got a lot of attack, which makes it pop forward as well. That's the other thing. You put, I can hear the kick way too loud. It sounds like you know this, but that's not necessarily just a bring the fader down thing, because when you bring the fader down and it has so much point like that, it's going to feel really thin, because now we're not getting the low end that you boosted up with the volume. So it could be, in this case, it could be one of those deals where it's a make an EQ move to bring the kick drum down instead of a fader move and all that. So I hope that is useful. Man, yeah, yes, Martin, those are Fab's videos, and they're really, really great. Let's see. So I'm trying to think if there's other stuff like the clicks and the pops thing. I wouldn't worry about that yet. I would go through, hit the things that just popped out to you as you were watching it, with that, like, sitting on the back couch while everybody's listening to your music, feeling. Go through and address that stuff, and leave the clicks and pops and all that for later, after you are just in love with the mix and you're like, this is great. Now let me go do all that boring crap. And there's a chance you might not even care about the boring crap in the end because you'll be like, this is great, you know? So I hope that that's useful, Flandy. I feel like I did more broad general stuff on that, but if you have more questions, mark at puremix.net, and I hope that it helps. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I love the comments in the chat are amazing. We went from Chicago to Toto. Yeah, the beginning riff, like a Rosanna kind of vibe. That's great. Okay. Our next song, Primetime Robots. Yes. You asked a second ago if I use the mono preset on the keys to check things in mono. Yes, a lot of the time. Sometimes I don't do it on the controller because I haven't taken the time to learn the preset thing yet. So I go into the pro menu and then like I flip around the settings until I'm in mono. Takes me a minute. So sometimes I'll just I use SoundFlow a lot, which is a tool that you can use to automate things in Pro Tools. I have 2 Stream Decks, the big boys, on my desk, and I built a macro to take my pan knobs on my print track and go like that. So I would get mono because it was easier to me than going through here. But we should nerd out sometime, and you could teach me how to make a preset for that on my controller because it'd be really nice to just go over there and hit that. Okay, next song from Primetime. A very special song, especially given the times. Okay, let's see. This is going to be Things We Do. Here we are. Okay, this is Things We Do for Love. Guys, this is a song from David Crosby, who you no doubt heard past last week. So I didn't know David very well. He was very close to the Puremix family. Fab made the last couple records with him, and they grew closer. And yeah, I'm heartbroken for everybody that lost him. I got to meet him one time when we were doing a live stream, and he was very, very sweet. And he said hi to my family, my mom, my wife, and my son, and everything. And it was very sweet. So yeah, my heart goes out to the whole family and everybody at Puremix. Feels the same there. So yeah. All right. Lost a great one, but got some amazing music from David that's going to live on for a very long time. So like this wonderful song. So let's check it out and see. Thanks for submitting this one, Primetime. Here we go. Hey, Universal Audio's in the house. Good to see you guys.
Was it something she said about a dream she had? One of those ones that faded so fast you knew it was bad. She dreamed that she's losing you. I guess it's time. There's only so much time. Reaching through the fear that's holding her here. These are the things we do. These are the things we do for love. At first it's just fun, but love is long. A little each day, you build it that way. A little each day.
So just a little bit of, I just want to point out to this right now. So just a little bit of resonance on little. Listen to the low mid. To me, there's a little bit of like a build up and just a resonant bump right there.
A little each day. build it that way.
Then on build.
It's being around.
So there's there's one frequency in there that's just kind of resonating out, and it sounds like a ringing thing to me, like where that one just kind of lasts a little bit longer. There's a little more decay to it, just at that like low mid peak there. So that's just something I would look at. Could be, ringing from a little bit of compression, but it sounds like there's just a little bit of a peak there. So maybe I would smooth that out if I was working on it.
Another set of hands. It's not what you want. It's only that you will kindle the flame.
These are the things we do. These are the things we do. These are the things we do for love.
And now looking back down these parallel tracks, where do you stand? Where do you stand? Where do you stand?
What a song. What a song. What a guy. Great job, Primetime. This is awesome. And I think it's feeling really good. I was, I caught myself like just completely listening to the song. It's obviously like a interesting time for it, but that the mix, portrays it well, and it feels really good. I'm obviously very familiar with this song too. There's, I think like Sonic Science Lab nailed the comments on it. Unless he put a boxy vocal, I didn't feel it was boxy. Just that one note I had about the vocal. Let's talk about the stereo image a little bit. I do feel the phase thing that he's talking about, just a hair on those acoustics, but I seem to remember something about, I haven't pulled up that mix or that multi-track in a long time. I seem to remember finding that they did that or something. That was like one of the things that you had to work on in that mix. But I think I agree overall with all of his comments. The backing vocals feeling like they're too wide than what the entire scene creates. So that comment, they did feel a bit wide, but also knowing some of your other mixes and stuff, one of the things I appreciate about your mixes is that you always try to, like, you're not going to recreate the main mix. You've done this. I think it was, I can't remember the last one, maybe Alanis Morissette that you did. You did another one though, and one of the things I really liked about your mix is that you weren't just doing a copycat of the original mix and trying to make a perfect mix. You were doing like really interesting scene changes and trying to find moments in it and bringing some creativity as a mixer into it without being concerned about like, do I have too much masking going on? Is there the proper amount of blah, blah, blah? Like it was creative. And I think that you've done that on those backing vocals there. That might be the kind of thing, if you were submitting this to an artist and, if it was a mix off or something like that, it could be the kind of thing where either they say, I love it, or they could say it doesn't feel right, something's weird, and then they go with a mix that was more safe or something. They do feel a little wide, so I hear a bit of a phasey thing that would probably like trigger my ears a little bit, but again, I do appreciate that you're going for something a little bit different. So I hope that helps. I didn't have a whole lot there. The the bass is a hard thing to deal with when it's an, I believe that, actually, I don't know if that's an upright. The bass has the characteristics of an upright in this mix. It's punchy and fast and transient in the low mids, and that's a difficult thing to deal with and control. It felt good to me. One point I thought about it though, so there might have been like a little pokey moment, but it's probably nitpicky and I wouldn't worry about it. So I would stand by and see what Tom's comments are. Tom knows this way better than me. He worked on it and on some of the more recent Crosby stuff as well. So yeah, Tom's gonna have some great comments for you. I'm wondering about the the bottom of the mix, like in the 80 to 100 range. But I think overall it felt really cool and that you went for something. So hope that helps. Awesome. Thank you for submitting it. I very much appreciate it. Okay. So, let me pan up a little bit. Scrolling up. Good to see Universal Audio here. Okay. So Chris Strickler said, talk a lot about mic placement and positioning. Oh yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Mic placement and positioning for kick drum snare. So I think Chris had a question about mic placement for those. So mic placement on a kick drum, that's one of those things that you can think about for like stylistically, what's the kick sound that you're going for? And it kind of goes back to that same thing that I was talking about if somebody moves in close to you to talk, what happens to their voice? Same thing if they go away. That's the same thing that happens with microphones, right? So if I'm doing like a hard rock track and I want a lot of beater, I want point on the thing, I want it to be present and a fast kick drum, like double bass and all that. I'm going to be placing that microphone closer to the beater, getting it close, not trying to get too much boomy low end and all that stuff. That'll maintain the speed of it. But if I'm doing something that's a little bit more laid back, like if there were drums on the things that we do for Love, for example, that microphone would probably be at the end of the shell, or maybe it would be a resonant head that doesn't have a hole on it, and the kick drum mic would be outside of that, just to get like a nice round, somewhat punchy but not fast and transient sound on it. Great video to watch. Any of the Vance Powell start to finish series. I think the one with Tyler Bryant and the other one would be really, really great to check out. How he mics drums and how he thinks about it really will bring perspective to that. The other one is with Illiterate Light, sorry. Yeah, cool. All right, chat room. Anybody else got mixes in there? Let me know. And I'm going to do a random one unless I hear from you guys. So in the next 2 seconds, which I won't because you're on a delay. Okay, I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to refresh, and then I'm going to pick one. Now I got to log in again. Hold on. I blew it. I shouldn't have done that. All right, stand by here. Here we go. Let me log in. We'll do this. Log in. Come back live. And then, yeah, we'll hit a couple more here before we head out for the evening. And that is assuming I can log back into my account, which I should be able to. If anybody hasn't seen yet, we have a new version of Puremix up. That is incredible. And everybody should go check it out. Version 3, it adds a lot of new features. I'm having a problem logging in. We've had a little bit of login issues recently with the new site, but things are getting ironed out every day and it's feeling better. Also, as I was logging in, I just got reminded that we had a freaking amazing video come out on Friday, and that is this guy. So on Friday, we released Aerosmith Basement Tape Enhancing Techniques with Michael Brower. So we've got Aerosmith on Puremix. It's amazing. So in that video, Michael pulls up some old recordings of Aerosmith rehearsing in the basement back in 70. I had to put it in the description. So in 71. So this is back in the very, very early stages of Aerosmith. Joe Perry had a tape recorder from his parents that he would record the band's rehearsals with. And he had it running fast forward a couple decades, they dug up the tapes, sent them to Michael, and Michael uses some tricks with isotope to kind of separate the drums out of it, the bass, the vocals, all of that stuff, and then he does a mix of those basement tapes to bring them back to life, basically, and not in a way that it sounds like a modern production. It still sounds like a basement tape, but they're more enjoyable to listen to, and it's something definitely to listen to or to go watch, because we have all got old recordings sitting around that could use some love. So that's a useful skill to have. Definitely recommend checking it out. Back to Mix Tank. Here we go. Let's see if anybody else had some songs in here. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Let's do Always Forward 4 from Black Rabbit. And unless somebody in the chat has a song, this might be our last one. Here we go. I love that organ sound. It's cool.
Tapped on the shoulder, not knowing the destination. Pack your things, take only that which you need. Light isn't needed, the path is clear. Always forward, never look backward. Find the strength to lose the baggage. Only.
Okay, I'm going to pause here to just to soapbox for a second. So Black Rabbit, this is awesome, and I'm loving the song and everything. This is really, really great. Seems well recorded as well, and the mix is working. So one thing I want to point out, though, I want everybody to listen to the hi-hat and then listen to the guitars. And the thing that we're going to talk about is contrast, and we'll talk about it after this section. Here we go. Okay, so one more time, listen to just a couple more seconds of that. Okay, so what I'm hearing, and the thing that I want to talk about is the hi-hat is very bright, very pointed, very loud, and the rest of the mix, there's some extra 4K stuff in the snare, but the rest of the mix is tame and calm and warm in a good way, and a way that I think fits the vibe of the song that I got from the intro riff and organ back here. Real organ too, I think, because I hear mechanical clicking, unless it was added by the VST. So that is that's a good example. Like in that case, knowing my speakers, my room, and all that, I would probably make those guitars a hair brighter, but not crazy brighter. But then if we go over to that section with the hat and listen. My perception of the guitars is that they're a lot darker now, but in this case, the hi-hat is bright to an extreme that I would just say the hi-hat's really bright. But that starts to make you think, like, is the mix dark? Is it muddy? All of those things, because you've got one element that's setting the precedent, or like the fence or the bounds of what we think high end would be in this mix. So that's a really important thing of that I feel in mixing that helped me out a lot was When you have an element and you're trying to figure out, do I make it brighter? Do I make it softer? Whatever. It's relative to the other instruments in the track. So, for example, is a vocal too bright, too dark? I'm listening for other high-end things that are going on in the mix and then making a judgment call based on those. That's the whole thing of, working in solo versus working inside of the mix and all that. But contrast is everything. Finding your reference point for how loud or quiet or how bright or dark something should be, a lot of times will come from another element in the mix. In this case, I feel the guitars are a little too dark and that cymbal's too loud and too bright, but that's a good example of two things with very different contrasts inside of one mix. So, end rant. Here we go.
Of decisions out of control. It's not your legs that are needed, but the mind pulling the strings. Forefathers gifted, yours is the path ahead. Always forward, never look backward. Find the strength to lose the baggage.
Okay, in this section here, the bass guitar feels loud does the kick, and it's another case of relationships where you want to kind of balance things off of each other. The other one is that the brightness of the cymbals is telling you kind of where to place the the vocal, the bass, everything. If the cymbals are bright, you might be inclined to push the bottom a little bit more in different elements of the mix. So kind of saying some of the same stuff here, but as you're listening, just kind of listen to the different elements of the mix and the contrast in tone between them.
Only onward, the forces end. Forces find the strength to lose the baggage. Only onward, the forces end. Always forward, never look backward. Find the strength to lose the baggage.
There's something weird width of the snare here. When it hits, I'm hearing that like kind of 4K-ish sound that's happening inside of it, 3.2-ish, just kind of go wide and spread out. Not sure what that is.
Only onward, the forces end. Forces end. Forces
Always make them wait for the last downbeat. That's awesome. Man, Martin put, I'm amazed by the level of the music around here. Wow. And I have to say the same. Like, there's been some incredible music on here today. Every bit of it has been amazing. every song has been awesome. Thank you guys so much for submitting all of the stuff that you do. It's incredible. Black Rabbit, this track is feeling really good. I got one more comment that I want to make, and that is in regards to, in the description, you say at the end of it, I added track spacer to the backing vocal bus, triggered by the guitar bus, but only in the 170 to 400 range. No compression added anywhere. So I want to talk about track spacer. Number one, like, if you find a tool that works for you, use it. No matter what anybody says, what I say, what anybody says. Use that tool. That's awesome. Good for you. Something like track spacer, I always look at them with like a little bit of a slant eye, because they make me worry about like auto mixing kind of things. Something like a track spacer thing, if it's used, so basically what track spacer is, if you're not familiar with it, you feed it a signal from another instrument into the instrument that you want it to hear, usually, I believe, and then you tell it, prioritize this instrument, and if two frequencies are clashing, duck them in the instrument that's not prioritized. That can be a useful tool, and not knocking it. Waste Factory makes it, and they are amazing. They make amazing stuff. Track spacer can be useful. That said, don't rely on it to make all of your decisions for you, and maybe you're not, and that's great. But if the background vocals come in and they're competing with the guitars, maybe there's something else that you can do in that moment to accentuate the backing vocals in an intentional way. Instead of, you obviously get some control with track spacer and you can dial it in, but instead of saying like, hey, you take the wheel and decide who's supposed to, get more priority between 170 and 400 there. When you have that approach to mixing, I know for me, it makes it less fun, because at that point I'm worried about like, do I have the perfect balance of the low mids? And, is that cymbal too bright? Is that hi-hat cymbal too bright? Right? That kind of stuff makes this a very tedious process and very kind of boring and not artistic in a lot of ways. Now, it's useful to know those practices, like the ones in the How to Listen video about, if something is close or far to you, if it's bright or dark, listening to the context of how do we know the hi-hat's too bright and loud, because we're hearing the other instruments who have a nice balance of them, and that guy's poking out both in frequency balance and in level. Okay, so we'll fix that. But we use that toolbox as our paintbrushes, right? We're always painting and we're being intentional about our moves. So you can decide the hi-hat's too bright, EQ it down, tame it a bit, throw an oxide on it, whatever, bring it down in level, put it back in the mix, and then you've taken the paintbrush yourself and you've made that stroke, and you've done it intentionally. And I hope and believe, even though we have things like ChatGPT, which are pretty incredible with AI, that the human artistry of it is what's always going to connect us to music and to song and everything. Again, I'm not being down on track spacer, and if you can use it in a way that is intentional, and maybe you are here and all of that, and I'm just on a rant, but then that's great. But keep it in art form, keep painting with your tool brush. Don't chase perfection, just chase your intention with it. That's all I want to say about it. Just because that stuff, like rewinding back for myself many years ago, that stuff would stress me out. Like, do I have the perfect balance? Should I use this thing to duck this? Do I need to set up a sidechain from this to a multi-bus compressor? And then that thing tells me that it's flat, so I guess it's good, right? You need to trust yourself, trust your monitoring environment, and trust your references and all that stuff. So, end rant. Sorry if that was a little much, but yeah, guys, I want to say thank you so very, 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 very much for watching. Thank you for submitting your music, and thank you for joining me on another Mix Tank. I'll be back next Monday, 2:30 p.m. with another episode of the Great Big Plugin Show. It's been awesome hanging out with you, and keep an eye out for Friday, the Beatles mixing videos. Next Friday, Foo Fighters, Daryl Thorpe, and make sure that you enter that giveaway for Density from Sound Particles. All right. See you guys next time.